And one thing, when in all the conversations I have with other people, not just through like Learning Lab, but also just people will reach out to me and want to talk about AI because I use it a lot. So, I've become a sort of a source for people to find out how to use it. And the two kind of underlying fears, these aren't the things that people precisely articulate, but these are the fears that are often in their heads. One is replacement, that AI will just replace us, that the work we do, in 5 years from now will be done entirely by AI and we will become, irrelevant in the process. And the other underlying fear is the FOMO fear. In other words, people will call, I really want to figure out how to use AI. What should I do? And so when I think about all of it, in the end, the thing that kind of resonates for me is to say that AI is not going to replace us. Because what we do as human beings is so profoundly important to this work. And second, that when someone starts with the idea of, I want to use AI, I think that's kind of the cart before the horse. And so the way I think about it is to say, start with goals, not with tools. Ask yourself, what problem do I want to solve? What do I want to accomplish, right? What is important? What are we trying to get done for ourselves, for our businesses, for our students, for our families? What are we trying to get done? And then ask how technology can help, because it can in so many ways. So this is just one example. There are, many, many, many other ways in which I use AI all the time, and but I always start by saying, here's something I want to get done, and here's, a place where AI can really help. So I think that framework really is important.
Swami, I was wondering if you could maybe give an example of someone or somehow that you've seen the opposite happen, where someone started with the tools and went.
Great question. Actually, people. So here's the kind of thing that people will sometimes say. I hear a lot about because there's when you think about modern large learning models, ChatGPT or Claude or Grok or whatever, all these systems, they have kind of a progression, right? There's the chatbot, I ask questions, it gives me information. There's now Claude has these things called skills that you can use to create various things. And then there's the next step, and it's called agentic AI that can do advanced things. When you think about the kind of work I did writing SOAR, that's an example of agentic AI, right? So I made the joke wasn't so much a joke in the Substack post I wrote about here at home, it's a constant refrain. You talk to Claude more than you talk to me. But it's true because I'm talking to Claude to write code, but Claude's writing the code. I'm not, right? That's an agent doing work on my behalf. The thing about those agents, and so people then sometimes say, I want to use agents because that's this buzz. It's like agents are out there. Agents are extraordinarily powerful. And if you don't know exactly what you need them to do, they will do the wrong thing really well. And so that means you might send out an email to someone that you really, 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 really didn't intend to send, because the agent sent it on your behalf on an autopilot system. And so in general, I'd say 5 things when I built SOAR, there are 5 things that were on my mind. 1, we don't know what our students are hearing from ChatGPT. And I use ChatGPT sort of loosely because it's the one model that more people have heard of, right? More and more people are using Claude. I certainly use Claude a lot, but it's not the tool that most of our students use when they talk about using AI. Second, misinformation spreads really, really fast. And that becomes a challenge. Third, that work stalls between meetings. You have a meeting with a student, and then a week later, 2 weeks later, whatever, you meet with them, and the things you asked them to do, nothing got done because perhaps they didn't know how to do it, right? Fourth, anybody who's worked with a teenager has heard that phrase. It was fine. How was your research into Purdue? It was fine. When my daughter was a teenager, it was always like the bane of my existence, right? Because I'd ask, how was school today, Grace? It was fine, Dad. And then college counseling is bigger than just college. So when students come to us and we're helping them with college admissions, in fact, they want to think about the major they're applying to. They want to think about alternate majors. They want to think about what career paths those majors lead to or don't lead to. They want to think about the impact of AI on all of that. They want to think about costs and financial aid and scholarships. And those all become intertwined in our work. And so college admissions is more than just college for most of us, right? Does that make sense? So the first one, we don't know what our students are hearing from ChatGPT. I don't know about you guys, and Claire Ruth, this is a great place to jump into. I'd say, most of our students are using ChatGPT, maybe not exactly in the way we want them to, but they are using it. And we have no idea what they're saying to it, what they're hearing from it, right? Misinformation spreads faster than we can connect. And it's not just, so certainly like if you guys are watching it, anybody who's watching this webinar knows there's like TikTok influencers talking about college admissions and whatever, I don't know, Reddit message boards with a bunch of misinformation. And of course there's ChatGPT, and then some of it comes from family and friends, my uncle said blah, 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 my friend said so-and-so. And we can't just overwhelm that with knowledge. We have to be able to reason through it with our students, right? Does that make sense? If we simply tell them, no, that's not true, they don't always believe us. So, and then work stalls with between meetings, and you'll see, this happens. Like Claire, you actually had a story about this. Maybe you want to tell us?
Sorry. Yes. Yeah. So I just had a student who, I had given him a couple of colleges to look into. And then when he came back to the meeting, I asked how the research went. And, I meet with my students once a week. So a whole week had gone by. And it was at that point, after a week had gone by, that he said, I actually don't really know how to do that. And so I walked him through, this was before SOAR. So I walked him through, some of the ways that he could do research. But, yeah, he hadn't asked that at the moment that, I think this goes with the, I'm fine. He hadn't asked that at the moment I assigned. I said, okay, I'll, give you a couple colleges to research. And so, yeah, he just didn't know how to, and didn't know what steps he should take or where he should look or what he should even be looking for. And so, yeah, that was a week that went by with nothing
getting done. Yeah. And the other happens too. Sometimes we'll ask students to say, okay, research scholarships, and, we have tools on Life Launcher that have had tools for many years where you can research scholarships, and we tell students go on the scholarship match and look for scholarships. Honestly, nobody ever does it because they don't know where to start. They don't know what questions to ask, right? After they've asked that first question, I want scholarships. They don't know what to do next. And the tools are all like click buttons here or there. Tools can't guide them through the process, right? So I think, yeah, that's for anybody who works in this knows that, that's true, that you meet with a student and you meet with them again, and really not as much has happened as you really wanted it to. Right? And then of course it was fine, because now you're spent that time trying to figure out what it was fine really meant. Students will say, well, actually, I'm looking at the websites of these colleges, I can't tell the difference. And sometimes that's sort of true. If you were to look at 5 different college websites, they all have certain similarities to them. So it's really hard to take them apart. But in fact, we all know that if you look at, the program in one college and program in another college, they're quite different from one another. The culture of different colleges, they're quite different from one another, right? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then, as I said, college counseling is so much bigger than just college, right? So scholarships, majors, summer programs, careers, or demonstrated interest. These students have so many questions. I realize these things aren't all at the same level, right? So asking, if I study computer science, will I still have a job? That's one level of question. The other kind of question is, what does demonstrated interest mean? These are one is very specific, one is very vague. But these are all the things that we end up having to talk to our students about, right?
And so, Swami, you alluded to that earlier, that it's really challenging to, for example, with scholarships. How do you personalize that for the family? Because it's hard because there's so many scholarships out there. There's so many enrichment programs out there. How does SOAR do a better job of personalizing?
Yeah, great question.
Our existing system.
Yeah, you'll see we built in a database into it, 6,700 databases. 6,700 plus scholarships. We licensed it from Peterson's. And Peterson's updates them every quarter, and we include that. We include a database of 250 plus enrichment programs. But also we built in a huge amount of knowledge into SOAR about how scholarship search works. So that you'll see, I'll show you, if you ask a big question like, I want scholarships, it will walk you through the process of thinking about where money comes from, financial aid, college scholarships, outside scholarships and so on. It will walk students through that entire process, in a way that you and I would, pretty much, right? Does that make sense? So, and the great thing is that this way now they are doing this work in between meetings. So when they come to the meeting, they come better prepared. Oh, I think I found this, Eagle Scout scholarship and I might want to apply to that. Can we help? Can we talk about that? Now, this is a meaningful conversation that we can actually help with, right? Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So what I want to do today is to really talk about like the tool. I'm going to showcase it, but I also want to talk about why it's built the way it is. Because in that way, you can understand whether it will fit your practice. If you're watching this and you started using it or you haven't started using it, you might wonder, like, is this right for me? And I think that's a valid question, something certainly to think about, whether it's right for you. But I want to showcase how, why it's built the way it is, so you can decide if it's right for you. So the way I think of it is, SOAR is the AI college and career planning assistance that keeps counselors in the loop and students on track between sessions. So it makes us all a team, student, parent, counselor, one team, and we all get to see what we are all doing. Right? Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So many design choices, and I'll just walk through them one at a time. So first, counselors are always in the loop, but it's not just counselors that are in the loop, students, parents are in the loop too. In other words, if a student does research on Purdue, you will see it. If you do research for on behalf of that student about Purdue, the student will see it, and the parent will see it too. Like everyone, that the information gets shared between everybody who's on the team, right? And so that idea that information gets shared is really important. That we keep this completely transparent for students. Yeah, does that make sense? The other is that it won't write essays. It won't write them well. It won't write them poorly. It won't write them just for brainstorming. I'll show you again how this works.